Hi, everyone. I'm Stefan Wiggers, and I'm accompanied by...
Thijs en Hollander.
And we're going to talk about an end-to-end scenario in a retail case. So where we leverage Cosmos DB. So I'm Stefan Wiggers. I'm a technical integration architect, also an Azure MVP. I work for HSO the Netherlands, and together with...
Thijs en Hollander. I'm a software engineer currently working for Team Rockstars IT in the Netherlands.
And we both kind of work together with also other colleagues of HSO, Harm O'Clock, and people from the retail company on a retail use case where we leverage Cosmos DB. So in this use case, we're going to present is how we did integrations from target systems or from source systems to target systems, basically. This kind of depicts one of the many integrations that follow this type of pattern. So where XML or JSON is being presented to the integration platform, which is built up of Azure Integration Services, can be Logic Apps, Azure Storage, functions, and so forth, leveraging Event Grid, where each package or each basically workload or XML containing information for this retailer can be assortments, products, pricing information, orders, and so forth, are being distributed to target systems. Basically how it works, as you can see here, is that it follows a type of pipe and filters pattern. So each part basically triggers another part, as in a XML message comes in, the function will put it into a storage that will kick off, at least it will trigger an event called a blob created, which triggers a function, which then subsequently will do validation, then triggers another function for this mechanism that will do some mapping to an intermediate format. From an intermediate format, it will be going to the target system format that it understands, and then eventually it's going to be delivered. So it's kind of a routing pattern where information is distributed from one to multiple systems. Usually within this case with integration, you want to do type of end-to-end monitoring. And that's what you see right here, is that all of this more like metadata is being pushed towards an Azure Service Bus topic, which has multiple subscriber, one being an Azure function that will push that meta information into Cosmos DB, where we'll leverage the change feed, and anything that goes wrong ends up in a incident management system called Topdesk, and then subsequently someone will handle that error. So this is basically what it depicts. Some of the more metric information and a lot of the other information from functions is consolidated in Application Insight. So this is more targeted for functional end-to-end monitoring. And where you see 1, 2, and 3 is where Thijs will do the demo about the code and anything, the intrinsics behind it. So over to you, Thijs.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, I will showcase 3 Azure functions that we have written. So the first one will be a validation function. So the file comes in, we want to validate the data. If there's faulty data, we want to let people know so they can start fixing it. If the data is good, we also want to send a message that everything is okay, so we also can track the file through the integration flow if we so desire. So that would be the first function I'm going to show. The second function is the function that takes the data out of the service bus and puts it into Cosmos DB. And the third function that we will look at is triggered by Cosmos DB, and it checks if the data that it received contains any errors that it needs to put into Topdesk. And if so, it will do so. Now, a quick disclaimer beforehand, all these functions have been edited heavily for demo purposes. We've distilled the functionality down, so please don't put any of this code in your own production environment. So this is the validate function. An assortment comes in. An assortment in this retail scenario is a combination of an article ID and a store ID. And basically what it means is that the article X will be sold in store Y from that moment on. Now, any kind of validation is possible on that data. You want to, for instance, check if the article ID is of an existing article, if the store ID references an existing store. For this demo, we keep it simple. We check if the article ID of the assortment is no longer than 8 characters long. If it's no longer than 8 characters long, then we can continue processing this file and send a report to the service bus stating that everything was fine and we can move forward with this file. If it was longer than 8 characters, we will send a report to a service bus stating that something was wrong, that there was an error, and that with a message containing the details of this error. Now, in all these messages, we also pass a tag and a step, and that's just to let people know that something went wrong in the assortment flow and in the validation step, so that they don't need to search everywhere to see where the error came from. This reporting service, all it does is it wraps the parameters that we are passing to it nicely and puts it onto Azure Service Bus. And Azure Service Bus will trigger the send to Cosmos DB function. What you could do here is take the message that you receive from Azure Service Bus, do maybe some cleaning of the data or format the data differently before you put it in inside of the Cosmos DB. As you can see here, we are quite happy with the formatted messages already have, and we put them into the Cosmos DB unaltered. And lastly, we have a function that is triggered by any change in the Cosmos DB. This is where the magic happens, so to say. Here, the object that is put in the Cosmos DB is deserialized. We check if it contains any error. If so, we want to create a ticket in our ticketing service, and we do so. If it does not describe an error, then we don't do anything here because we only want to alert people if there are errors. So let's go through this flow. Let's simulate an event grid trigger by using Postman. So first, what we have here is an article ID with 8 characters, which is considered valid. So when we send this in, we expect it to send the message that everything went fine and validation was passed and we can move on with this file. If we continue, we move to the other function which receives this report. As you can see, the report indeed states that everything was fine, as validation has been passed, and that this file can move forward in the integration. We then also relay that information to Cosmos DB. And after a couple of seconds, the Cosmos DB triggers. It checks if the report is about an error. It is not. So this function does not take action, does not alert anyone, and finishes execution. Now, if we create data that is not going to pass validation by adding an extra character to the article ID, when we send that in, of course, we will raise an error. The article ID was invalid. There was an error. We pass this to the service bus, which then relays this report stating that there has been an error, that the article ID was invalid, and this sends it to the Cosmos DB, which then again, after only a couple of seconds, can kick in, detect that there was an error at some point in the integration, and create an incident in the ticketing system so that people get emails stating that they have to investigate, that something went wrong in the validation of the assortment flow. They can find out the root cause, fix it, and do whatever it is that they need to do about this. So that was the demo that we had prepared for you. So back to you, Stefan.
Yeah, thanks, Thijs, for this very clear demo. I know that this is something pretty simplistic, but there's a lot of things that go between the source and target systems in all these flows, depending on what type of data you're distributing, if it's assortment, price, and ordering. Ultimately, as you can also see in the slide, it will end up giving a report to someone that has to handle the error. And basically, because we're using tagging, it kind of really directs them into where in the flow or in the chain something goes wrong. This is more end-to-end monitoring based on metadata that you kind of have control over. So it has nothing to do really with metrics, where you can either use application insights or you would put it into log analytics, or you use KSQL queries to find out. That's all more than diagnostic part. This is really intended to really give sense of where in your domain or what type of integration you work with is faulting because of validation or something with your mapping goes wrong. And this really gives a very specific target information where, okay, this is where it goes wrong, and this can be very time consuming or not time consuming, because you straight away know, okay, this within the chain, this is where it goes wrong, and you just leverage an incident management system. And in this case, we're leveraging Topdesk. So this is really where Cosmos DB in this particular way shines, where we leverage the change feed and we consolidate a lot of information about all these integrations. And we can even do more integration with, let's say, Power BI or anything else to get more information out of that data as it is possible. This is something we're going to look forward to, but for now, it's just a signaling mechanism to find out where in the chain something goes wrong. And I think the demo of the code really illustrates what happens in the background. And I hope this will be useful for you, and you can get some ideas from it. And you can always contact us, of course. But anyways, we really like to thank you for your attention and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, everyone.